The Two Hammers Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Two Hammers Show here on Claret and Booze. This show moving forwards will be hosted by either myself, Gary or John and one other hammer. Two Hammers. The clue is in the title. The idea is that we invite somebody else in from the outside to give a different perspective, a fresh perspective on current events at West Ham. If you want to criticise me or John, especially John, or Gary, that's absolutely fine. Crack on in the live chat. But in the live chat, please, please, please be nice to the guests. Don't be rude. We're going to talk. We're going to have a chinwag on current events. And then probably the last 10, 15 minutes, we'll do a QA as well, where you can kind of put your questions in the chat. And then we'll have a little chat about what you want us to talk about as well. Okay? So I think that's pretty much cleared it up. So let's get on with the show.
Good evening and welcome to the Two Hammers Show here on Claret and Booze. So tonight I'm joined by host of legendary West Ham podcast, Stop Hammertime. It's Phil Whelans. Phil, how are you?
Hello, Killer. You all right?
I'm all right. I'm getting by. It's been a while since I saw you at the Black Line. It's been at least a couple of weeks.
That's right. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago in the sunshine, the blistering sunshine out in the back garden, and now it's like been pissing down with rain all day.
I know.
We've jumped straight onto the autumn.
So look, if you like listening to podcasts like me, I'm a bit of an addict, and you haven't subscribed to Stop Hammertime, please do so. And I mean, Stop Hammertime was the original West Ham podcast, wasn't it? It was from back. It's been running 16 years now, right? Since 2007.
2007, December 2007, we started. So Kirbishley era.
Was that the Tevez season?
No, the one. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no. 5-6 is Pardew won the good season. So 6-7. No, it'll be the one after then, because it was Christmas 7, so it'll be 7-8. So that's finishing 10th place under Kirbishley.
Yeah, so that was the campaign for justice and all that stuff. The what's his name? The actor, the Sheffield United support.
Yeah,
what's his name? Sean Bean. Sean Bean.
Yeah, Sean Bean.
Yeah.
Who? I mean, no spoilers, but he is quite surprisingly killed in the first series of Game of Thrones, and it's possibly one of the most kind of heartwarming pieces of television I'd seen since It's a Wonderful Life. It was quite often the most famous person in a show isn't sort of killed straight away, but he is, and that felt like a kind of natural justice.
I think that happens quite regularly with him. I think he gets killed off in most shows. Yeah. So
Tony Way, who's an actor whose face you'd recognise, but possibly not his name, but he's in a lot of things. He is killed in nearly. He's a hammer as well. That's why I mentioned him. He's been on Stop Hammertime a few times. He's killed in practically everything he's in. It's very unusual for him not to be killed. He might put it in his contract.
So look, Phil, you're an actor, writer, comedian, director, producer, impro. What do I call you? Performer, specialist?
Improvisation. Yeah, I do a lot of improv.
Yeah, and I forgot. I know you told me before that you played in bands, but you posted a YouTube clip of a TV show of yourself alongside Bill Bailey, Mark Lamar, and people like that, other comedians performing a really brilliant version of Gangsters by the Specials. So I'm going to use that as the outro tonight.
It's funny because Mark Lamar, when Terry Hall died, someone sort of sent Mark a link to that clip, which was from a TV show that they were filming in Edinburgh that year in 1997. And Mark was the host of that show, so he got us all on stage, and Bill Bailey, Martin Treneman, Kevin Eldon, me. And we sang that song, and he'd never seen the clip, and was sort of, he's quite a purist, Mark. So he was sort of, was sort of looking at that clip through his fingers like that. But he was surprised at sort of how kind of competent it was. He thought it was going to be absolutely atrocious, but someone sent him the clip when Terry Hall died, and it sort of, kind of came back to life. That I mean, I didn't know someone had snipped just that bit out of a TV show, because I think that's pretty much all we did is play a song on the outro.
Oh well, you're going to be doing the outro again tonight. So so from your going back in your time as Stop Hammertime host, what's your sort of abiding memory of that first year? I mean, what first of all, what made you start a podcast?
Well, it was my agent's idea. When I signed up with my agent, Mike Lee, in 2007, not the film director, he did a podcast. And of course, they were really new at the time, podcast. Certainly never heard one. And he did one, he supports Spurs, and he did one with Phil Cornwall. And that's still going, the Spurs show. But that was the only one that little stable did. And so he said, why don't we just leave the microphones up and you and your mates can come in and do a West Ham one. I was like, oh yeah, okay. So I rang Jim and Pete Ward. Pete did the very first one, but then almost immediately he had trouble with elderly parents and was basically driving from south to east London. He grew up very near the old ground. Most nights when he just couldn't sort of do it. So he does it occasionally, which is brilliant. Pete's fantastic. But the first couple of years were, they really, my agent Mike and his partner sort of, were really working to get it going. So, once I sort of turned up and we would sometimes go for a drink at the pub over the road and there's a big 4x4 with Ray Winston sitting in it. And Ray Winston goes, do you want to sit in the car, have a warm? And I'm like, well, Ray, there's a pub over the road. And he went, oh, fuck, you said that. Yeah, all right. And he told his driver to say that. I felt very guilty because the guy sits there all night waiting for Ray. But yeah, we went to the pub. We went to the pub before the podcast. Then after the podcast, by this time, there was a little stable of podcasts that they had. They had an Arsenal one and Chelsea one, ours, the Spurs one, obviously. So we went to the pub afterwards and we didn't know that maybe 2 podcasts before us in this production line, they'd done the Chelsea one, which at that time was presented by Phil Daniels. So an impromptu quadrophenia reunion happened in that pub. Also, that's right, the one before us was the Arsenal one, which Alan Davis did. And I said to Ray, oh shit, let's finish our drinks and go down and just like slowly walk in on the Arsenal podcast. And so they're doing the Arsenal one and suddenly Ray's looming over Alan Davis going, hurry up and finish. Let the big boys eat. Like that. And the first time we had an ex-player on was because, obviously, getting Ray Winston on and Nick Frost did it, Chris Akabusi did it. It was great, But Sam Delaney was working at Heat magazine, and because of the sort of ready presence of attractive young women working in the media in, London's glittering West End, he was able, surprisingly, to secure the services of Frank McAvenny to come on the podcast. So McAvenny was the first ex-West Ham player we had. So it was me, Jim, Sam, and McAvenny. And we were starstruck.
Surprised.
And then after that, we Cotty, I think, might have been next. Then Martin Allen. Then we did those live ones, a couple of which you came to, and the Julian Dix might have been the first live one. It was brilliant. It was great. Paris did one, lovely bloke. He was at that funeral that you and I were at a couple of weeks ago. For Phil Parks' son, Marie Parks, who's wonderful, really great girl who died tragically. But Paris was there at that funeral. He's such a great guy. Great guy.
That was such a sad day. I mean, for you guys in the audience, I mean, Marie Parks is Phil Parks' daughter, and she sadly died, suddenly. And so she was part of our little group of friends, and she was, she was lovely, wasn't she? She was really great.
Yeah. And, she came along to the Phil Parks live podcast with an audience. Like Phil, was on the podcast, and there was his wife and his daughter. So we were chatting to them afterwards. The nicest people, nicer people you couldn't possibly meet. I think Marie thought, oh yeah, there's a load of people here who all go and watch the Hammers. I think sometimes part of the joy of doing Stop Hammertime was, for me and Jim, you quite often, there's a set of people you go with that you've met when you're a kid, and they're like the only fucking people you go to games with.
I know.
Since we did Stop Hammertime, that's how I met you. You and I have driven up to Liverpool to watch them. We've driven down to Southampton. You and I watched David Martin's glorious.
That was what a day that was. What a day, that was.
Beating Chelsea 1-0. You and I went to Spurs and saw the first goal, the first win in their stadium, but it's also the first goal in their stadium, wasn't it?
It was
away goal.
Right behind Arnautovic when he played that ball into Antonio. I mean, you couldn't get a better view, could you? It was just they are my two standout games of the last couple of years, obviously apart from Prague, but they were my two standout games of the last couple of years.
They were sort of fraternity of people we sort of met, me and Jim doing that podcast.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't really imagine that, you know, that was going to happen, but it's, you know, it's a brilliant. Yeah. We run into people everywhere now. Every game we go to, there's loads of people at the home games, but we see people at away games all the time. Yeah. So many people out in Prague. All in that square at the same time. It was amazing.
It was so good. And I mean, you made quite a name for yourself early on, especially like with the live shows and everything else, because you were doing like personas, weren't you? You brought new personas to certain well-known people, like Lewis Beaumorty, who was kind of a crazy killer, wasn't he?
Yeah, the first one was because I sort of knew that the Spurs show that because Phil Cornwall was an impressionist, and so he used to do. It was Martin Yoll, I think, when he started. He sort of used to do him, and I wasn't sort of particularly sort of setting out to kind of copy what Phil did, because I would try and write some sort of funny thing for the podcast. Yeah. You know, obviously we talk about wrestling, we talk about football, but I think the first one of those I did was when we signed Radoslav Kovac. Who, if you remember, along with Valon Barami, they looked like Jedwood because they both had like dyed blonde hair.
Yeah, they did.
But Valon Barami was good and Radoslav Kovac was sort of shit. And I had him sending emails to his mum from London where he had started a human trafficking organisation. He was really even though he was Czech, I sort of had him as a kind of Eastern European sort of drug dealer that was obsessed with sex.
I remember it well.
And he was the first one, and then it just sort of sprang from that. There were players that I would never do an impression. You know, it would just be.
That's what I mean.
It was never an impression. It was like in a way it was almost like how that person didn't talk rather than.
You gave them a new persona, right? So Andy Carroll was some very meek Geordie who had moved in with Nolan, and called him Dad.
Because that was the story, wasn't it, from Newcastle? Was that Andy Carroll was so bad. Yeah. Because they were both in Newcastle together. Andy Carroll was so bad and going out and caning it and doing drugs and stuff that they made him live with Kevin Nolan as father and son. I know. So it's coming. Mrs. Nolan, when's Kevin coming back? Could you do me hair until Kevin comes back in? Aye. Yeah. Oh, Bonnie lad, I'll do your hair for you. You sit here. Oh, thanks, Mrs. Nolan. And you're making into a ponytail. It's so sad as well. The idea that they lived as father and son in the same house.
It was probably strangely accurate the way that was. So, and then, like you said earlier, the biggest thing I got from Stop Hammertime anyway was like bringing people together. You brought a big group of people together, and we were out. A lot of us were out in Prague recently. It was, you know, Prague for me was just a surreal experience. I loved every second of it, and especially because I managed to get a ticket and get into the stadium, and that was
that was great, wasn't it? And you were about to watch it in the big screen, weren't you?
I was, and I'll just never forget that being inside the stadium. But I think you know, it was a bit of a test of endurance for you, wasn't it? Because you stayed awake for like 2 days.
Yeah, the only ticket I could get flight. Well, you know, when you go on those kind of Sky Scanner things, they offer you a kind of an outward and a return flight as a sort of package, and there were very few options, and one of them basically was like leave at 6:30 in the morning, on the day of the game, and then come back at 6:05 the following day. And I sort of thought, well, because it started at 9, it's like Central European time. You're going to go, well, you go to extra time penalties. It's not going to finish till like well after midnight. If they win it, they're going to be carrying a big trophy around the stadium for about 45 minutes. We're not going to get out there till like 2 anyway. So I sort of think you might as well just go to the airport and sit and read a book and try and, not to nod off and miss the flight. So that's what I did. But in fact, Jim, who I do Stop Hammertime with, was just at the last minute. He saw like a room in a hotel near the airport for like 99 quid. So basically I got my flight, which was a bit earlier than Jim's, got into that room, had a shower, charged the phone. Because, when you're going to be out all day and your ticket is on your phone, my phone's phone by 9 o'clock in the evening, my phone's got like, 7% on it. And because I would have been up since like 2 in the morning to get a flight at 6:30. I haven't got one of those in-car chargers, so I couldn't do it. Yeah. I'm a Luddite, basically. But so that was good. Yeah. Charged the phone up. So, when we shared a cab back with you, I think Jim and I lay with our clothes on top of our respective twin beds for probably 1 hour, maybe, 2 or something like that, and then went to the airport.
But Phil, was it worth it?
Oh, it was worth. Of course, it was worth. Massive.
It was
great. It was a sort of Sam Delaney bumped into us after the match, and he still sort of mused. Because Sam has sort of transitioned into writing about mental health quite a lot. And does a podcast called The Reset, and his guest for his 100th episode is Chuck D from Public Enemy. So I'll be listening to that. But in a sort of interested in my reaction because of mental health, Sam was very taken with the fact that he came up jumping up and down with his mates, and I was in a slight trance and said, I thought Emerson played well. That was pretty much my only comment. And I think, and I recall saying that, and I think it was because I was, I sort of went into a trance from the moment that I thought, shit, this is extra time penalties.
Yeah.
And then the goal happened in front of us, the through ball from Paquetá. Bowen's onto it. And I'm sort of still going, who's going to take the first? Well, actually, he'd be good to take the what? Fucking hell, he's just put the ball in the net. And I just sort of thought, oh, fuck, it's not extra time. It's not, we've won it.
It's stuff that dreams are made of.
Yeah, and I think it was like, I was a little bit not in the moment when the ball went in the net, just because I, very much at the forefront of my mind was, because I'd sort of said, oh, do you know what, I've got a strong feeling for extra time penalties lose the shootout.
Yeah.
Just got a feeling. We'll go all the way and then fall at the very last hurdle. It just felt, I don't know. And then when that didn't happen, in like the 90, there was 1 more minute of added time after that, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was. Went on forever, didn't it? It went on forever. It was just ridiculous. And then they got that free kick right at the end, didn't they? Thinking, here we go. Because you never believe it. Even when you're 3-0 up as a West Ham fan, you're just not happy, are you? You want the fourth because anything can happen. We've been there, we've seen it.
Vaz-Tay, obviously that happened under us in the playoff final. Because he hits it high, and I just go, "Oh, it's going over!" But because it goes right up into the roof of the net because he's leaning into it, isn't he? So when that goes in, that reaction when that goal went in, that sort of matches the reaction in Prague when. Honestly, in Wembley when Vaz-Tay scored that goal, my dad was with us and everything. It was such a special day, and literally it was so loud. Is all you could hear noise. You know what I mean? It was just noise. It was so loud. I loved that day, and it was brilliant. We had a fantastic day that day. It was a really wonderful. The whole thing was good. Again, a lot of people that listen to the podcast met beforehand and afterwards at the pub near where we did the podcast. who hadn't got enough beer in because it's sort of quite a kind of officey area. So they tend not to have all that much clientele at the weekend. So we just drank them dry, literally drank them dry. No more beer left.
Right. So, Phil, enough talking about nice stuff, right? We're going to talk about current West Ham now.
Right.
And this is, you know, I just want to draw a picture. I'm sure you know what's been going on, but
I mean, I sort of don't pay a lot of attention to the stuff that happens in the closed season that much. But you can't, if you just flip through the channels, I kind of see Sky Sports News and sort of see pretty much a bit of who we've been linked with. I think I've seen quite a few of the names.
We've been linked with about 120 players so far in summary, but there is no real good news to tell today. So I'm just going to just tell you what's happened. So over 4 weeks ago, we sold Declan Rice, still got no replacement. Lanzini's left. He joined River Plate today, which is great, right?
How did he?
Yeah. Antonio wants out. That's known, and his Saudi deal has fallen through. So I don't know why it's fallen through. I think West Ham wanted to charge 10 million and they didn't want to pay a transfer fee or something. Scamacca wants out and has kind of agreed terms with Inter, and I'm really gutted about that because I really rate Scamacca. That's probably 5 million away from a deal. And Cresswell wants out. He's training by himself at the moment because he wants a move to Wolves because they're going to give him a 3-year contract. They've only offered 2.5 million, but West Ham want 5 million. I think personally they should accept it. So that's kind of the background of what's going with the players. And David Sullivan, he seems to have created this situation, and I don't know whether he's done it deliberately or not. But this is why I want to talk about David Sullivan tonight, because for me, he is the root cause. He kind of couple of months ago almost, we were in Prague having a great time. The day after Prague, the morning after, David Sullivan went on TalkSport and basically started a bidding war for the captain, probably while he was still in the showers. It was really bad timing. There was no need to do it then. He could have left it a couple of days and let us enjoy our celebration. But it's just gone from strength to strength. The Rice deal dragged out. We brought in Tim Stighton at the end of it, who's a sporting director. Now, the correct structure for a club with a sporting director is for him to report to Sullivan and for the manager to report to the technical director. Instead of doing that, Sullivan's got both of them reporting to him. And he's added Mark Noble to the mix and himself to make a 4-man transfer committee. And now Moyes and Stighton can't agree on anything. And that's come directly from Sullivan, who said he's pulling his hair out. It's chaos. He doesn't know what to do. And he's throwing Moyes under the bus. But I don't, for me, I'm quite angry with Moyes as well, because he's being quite obstinate about not taking Stighton's picks. But at the same time, this is a situation created by Sullivan that shouldn't be a situation, right? That is my point. And so, I mean, what do you think? What's your opinion on this? How do you?
I mean, I don't really know. I mean, a lot of movement doesn't happen until the last few days of the transfer window. Just in mitigation of people going like nothing. So I mean, we are, I think, probably particularly guilty of that. But a lot of, I mean, a movement is starting to happen this week, just from my sense of, those crawlers going along the bottom of the screen in Sky Sports News. Things seem to be happening this week. It's difficult. I mean, those names that have been thrown around for potential Rice replacements. Some of the European ones I know less than the English ones, Gallagher and obviously McTominay, Scottish. I know and am aware of their work and think they're both sort of probably pretty good. I mean, I guess there's just got to be lots of possibilities for if you don't get one. Do you know what I mean? I think because we have quite often we've put all our eggs in one basket and that falls apart at the last minute. So the fact that we're casting our net wide, I mean, I don't know, but I'm not sure that's a problem, is it?
A bit too wide, because it's turned into a sort of scattergun approach, and it's like as if they don't want specifically one player. You know what I mean? If you're one of those people in that scattergun, and we've got, I think, 8 or 9 bids in apparently last week, a lot of people for the same position, right? You sort of must be thinking as one of those players, well, I'm not very special, am I?
I mean, I don't know what footballers think. It's like, I mean, I don't know. I'm surprised that Sam Maximan guy is going to, a golf club because, he's currently at a club that's just got into the Champions League that has the amount of money a golf club's got. So it's a golf club. He's, that seems, why is he doing that? That seems really odd. It sort of feels like that kind of the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, they're a little bit like the American League was in the kind of 70s when people like Rodney Marsh and George Best went to get like one last massive paycheck. Obviously, Lanzini did a very interesting version of that in that he did his kind of retirement pension pot when he was about 21 and turned up in this country age about 23, ready to play football in like a proper division.
Yeah, I think.
So I'm surprised. So the motivations of footballers and what they're thinking, am I liked or am I not liked? I just don't know what they're thinking. There was one time when I said to Jim, for once, I'd really like to buy a player where the club we're buying them from doesn't want to lose them, but somehow we, make an offer, or playing for West Ham is much better than playing for that other club. And when we say Lee Bowyer from Leeds the first time, Jim went, there you go, that guy is a big player for Leeds United. We've signed him. And what in fact happened was we went down that season, and then the following season Leeds went down.
He was a disaster. He was a disaster for us. And I think when you look at the players because we've got two lists on the go at the moment, Moyes primarily wants James Ward-Prowse, who I'm not against, really, McTominay, who you mentioned, as a kind of defensive midfielder. I think he that's kind of to replace Rice, strangely. And then Harry Maguire as a centre half, because you can't rely on Kurt Zuma's knees. So look, I mean, on a certain level, they are the positions that need filling. I'm not convinced that if you got McTominay and Ward-Prowse playing together, that's the answer to our prayers, because you'd have McTominay, Ward-Prowse, and Paqueta. I don't know how that will work in terms of a trio. McTominay's apparently got some ability going forward, and as a holding player, as a central defensive midfielder, he's a bit of a liability, especially playing in front of Maguire. That's something that's kind of appeared quite regularly for Man United. And then so that's the three players, and they're three pretty obvious players that if you want, Moyes is going for Premier League experience. He's got 1 year left. Three pretty obvious players. Two of them he probably knows already anyway. Now, we've put several bids in for Ward-Prowse. Yesterday, we said it was the last bid, 25 million. Apparently, we're going back in with a 30 million bid. I don't know what's going to happen after that, whether that's going to be the last bid, but Southampton want 40. Maguire, they want something ridiculous for, but that ain't going to happen. And McTominay, they want 30 or 40 million. So if we got those three players, that's pretty much all of the Rice money gone. Stuyton, on the other hand, wants the likes of Youssef Fofana of Monaco, who played tonight against Arsenal at the Emirates, and Moyes and Stuyton were there. He scored against Arsenal and apparently was really, really dominant. This is a box-to-box midfielder, very young, French international, really highly rated, pushes the team up the pitch, looks exactly what we want. But apparently Stuyton we're getting for 30 million, right? At least we could. Maybe not now. He's had a good game against Arsenal. Stuyton recommended him. Moyes said no. Now they've both gone to watch him. So I'm hoping for a chink of light on that one.
Yeah. I walked past that game this evening. Their ground's just up the road from my flat, and I went to the gym, and everyone was, red and white shirts walking towards the stadium. I didn't know there was a game on tonight.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I don't know what it's supposed to be. I don't know who's got like a chairman that's like really great and everyone likes them. Sullivan, it always feels that, he is how he appears, sort of stuck in his ways. He's in the managerial choices. They've never kind of unearthed the kind of Klopp or Pochettino in their hunts for a young manager. It's always been, it's Martin O'Neill. It's, Slaven Bilic, who used to play for West Ham. And who is just managing the Croatian team, and perhaps another Correct team. It's always players we've heard of. It's also managers we've heard of, and very often players we've heard of as well. So there is that sort of stuck in his waysness. Someone also made this very good point about brinksmanship and going in with very low offers and don't go to bed and all that. Everything goes to transfer deadline day. Somebody made the point that the later you buy a player, the less wages. That's 1 month's wages less that you have to give them on the 1st of August than you do on the 1st of September.
Surely
you know what
not.
I mean? And you're like, surely not. But also you kind of go, I wouldn't put it past him.
But what about pre-season? What about getting
right,
players to play together?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that is, I think it is, because there's always two parties in a transfer. So so the other club is not going to play ball with you. It's like just because you want to buy a player right now doesn't mean you're going to do it. Arsenal held up their own purchase. Yeah. Because they knew we wanted it. And once the fee of 105 million was agreed, Arsenal started dicking around with loads of paperwork because it's kind of in their interest not to give the money that they've promised they're going to give and that they know that the selling club wants. It's, just not to give it to them.
Well, I'll tell you what, that was the one time I complimented the ownership on actually, doing really well in the sale of a player, maximising the asset. I think they did. But then what you wanted straight after that, after losing Rice, because for most people that was a kick in the guts. What you wanted after that, we all knew it was happening, but it was still a kick in the guts. But what you wanted after that was not a Rice replacement, but a big signing within a week or two. And it's just been nothing. It's just been noise. What positions do you think we need to fill?
I think we, my part of my problem with last season was just up front. There wasn't. I've said this again and again on the podcast to almost tedious levels that I think basically our front three doesn't have enough talent in it, and that's why those goals weren't going in. All this stuff that Moyes plays a negative brand of football. You and I went to Southampton where we got something like 14 corners and we'd had like 20 shots. But our final ball, the cross, just a little pass inside the box for someone to slot in. Yeah. I'm, not throwing the other two under the bus, but Bowen I would keep in a front three. And one, if not two of the other two, has just got to be a better fucking footballer. And Benrahma and Antonio are not that. And I think we're desperate for someone in that position, someone good in that position, either a striker or, it is incumbent when you have a front three for all three of those front three to have a goal threat. I don't think, at Arsenal, even because they've given him the number of 9 shirt, it doesn't mean that Gabriel Jesus is now the guy that they think is going to put the ball in the goal any more than Saka or Martinelli. Yeah. He's just now in that front three and has got a shirt with 9 on it. It doesn't mean he's Duncan Ferguson from like 1992 or something. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean they're going to bang long balls to him. All it means is that he is another guy in their front three with the ability to put the ball in the net. If we didn't buy another, if we were frozen in time and literally didn't buy another player before the season starts, I would play Bowen up the middle. I'd play him up the middle.
So you're kind of thinking the same as me, right? Because I've been really disappointed with Benrahma. I thought he's done well for what he is, right? But his final ball is awful. It gets himself into some fantastic attacking positions, and then the final ball he just doesn't deliver. And Antonio, I'm afraid, for me, I want to take that option away from Moyes. I don't want to give him.
Yes, that's right. Option, right. That's right.
And so I'm going to be really disappointed if Antonio stays. Nothing personal against him, but he didn't look good last year. He had a few really great games where he for instance, Arsenal, I think he run them ragged, but that's what he does. He bullies defences, right? He doesn't really score goals. And
that's right.
Surely what you want a striker to do. I don't want to see Danny Ings trying to play the Antonio role.
No, that's right. That's right. I mean, actually, a front three with Bowen and Antonio in it, and someone who can stick the ball in the net, that would be good. Yeah. But it's hard, isn't it? Because what I said about I don't think it's that Antonio is the intention is that he will lead the line, and like David Cross, he's the only one that sticks the ball in the net. And at the same time, I always remember what Carlton Cole had a little sort of period where he was injured, and he sort of came back from injury, and Matthew Upson was sort of being interviewed, and he went, "Oh, it's great that Carlton's back, because, you know, he gives you something to aim for, and he also gives you an out ball if you're in trouble." So it's not necessarily the manager that's sort of telling them to bang it long to the big man. They do it. Because, you know, if you're a defender, you're under pressure. If you sort of whack it long, you look like a bit of a donkey. If you whack it to a sort of target man, even if they don't get it, it looks like you've done something deliberate. You know what I mean? It makes you look less donkey-like. And also, I just think there is that playing the percentages idea of just, well, if we do hit the big man at the top, he wins that header and it bounces off to one of ours, then we might score a goal. You know, the best person I really ever saw at that was Didier Drogba, where they did have a system where they banged it long, but not when he was in like the penalty area. He'd be 2/3 of the way up the pitch, and there'd be a runner. There'd be a runner going past, you know.
Just a different level, though, wasn't he?
Different level. That's right. That's right.
Antonio, he is a converted winger. He's not a natural striker. You know, So I would like to see exactly that. I mean, we need somebody to replace Antonio. We also need
I think pace as well. I think we sort of need pace, possibly from a new left back. You know,
you don't fancy what's his name, Emerson?
I like Emerson very much. I think he's great. I think he might have been our best player in the final in Prague. I thought he was dynamite. Thought he was dynamite. I really like him, but I think we need another one because of Cresswell's age.
What about Skulls? Skulls plays there, you know, as a backup.
Yeah, I wonder whether he'll cut it. I mean, he looks good, but, you know, young, Premier League, you know, it's like these guys, you know, you only have to think about Freddie Sears to go, that kid's dynamite, 40 goals a season, he'll go straight in. And, you know, I just don't know what the gulf is like between the Championship and the Premiership, but I believe there is a gulf. And, you know, I went to the 5-1 dismantling of Arsenal, you know, with the youth team. And I'm going to, you know, sort of slightly throw in a sour note. Arsenal actually looked like they probably had the better footballers than ours. Not all of them, but there were sort of a few that you thought, I can see them playing in an Arsenal team. All of ours were like, okay, they were sort of solid. I would say Skulls was a standout. There was a good centre-back. Both of the the two midfielders, Earthy and Kelly, were small, talented, really sort of nippy. They were sort of new Mark Noble types. But what they had, and it was just unbelievable to see it in a West Ham team. Arsenal scored their goal early, and West Ham were just a machine. They were just like a pitch roller that just rolled over them and just kept going, banging in 5 goals and then stopping when the referee blew his final whistle. They were just so well organised. I mean, Kevin Keane, hats off. You know,
he's done brilliantly.
He's done a fantastic job. You know, I like Mabama. One thing, you know, we scored 5 goals, but our, you know, much lauded new young striker who may go into the, you know, first team, and in fact has gone into the first team, didn't score one of those 5 goals. But what he did was about 3 defenders went with him the whole time. And the way his constant movement, choice of movement, opening up space for, you know, others to come in and score goals. I think, you know, he could be, I mean, it's such a step up, and you don't want too much too young. Do you know what I mean?
Moyes likes Mabama, right? He likes him. And he played him against Rennes the other day. He played a 4-2-3-1. So after flirting with 2 up front, where Danny Ings and Mabama looked really good together, incidentally, over in Australia, he went back to the 4-2-3-1 and he played Ings up front for the first half and then swapped him out for Mabama and basically said, get up there and play the Antonio role after that. So that's my fear, that Mabama's gonna find himself playing up front alone against Premier League opposition. He's not going to get the right opportunity. So look, we've got the season starts soon. And we've got a horrendous run of fixtures in the first few games. So I think the first 11 are tough, right? So tell me how you think this little lot are going to go. I don't want to predict them, but just give me a sense of how you think. So the first 5: away to Bournemouth, home to Chelsea, away to Brighton, away to Luton, home to Man City.
Well, it depends who runs out on the pitch. So I sort of, last couple of years, I fancy us at home to Chelsea. I fancy us,
You reckon?
I think there's
Chelsea, the Pochettino Chelsea.
Sorry?
The Pochettino Chelsea, the new Chelsea.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'll only just taken a while for his ideas to, settle down, won't they? I mean, he's got a massive squad to filter through. I mean, no one's going to hit the ground running. Maybe they will, maybe we will. I fancy Bournemouth away. So that's wins from the first 2. Gives us a bit of luxury. Who's next?
Away to Brighton. I'm going to that, sadly.
Well, that's we'll get beat there.
Yeah, away to Luton. I mean, that's historically a loss.
Yeah, we'll beat them at the tiny stadium. Scott Oakes, revenge for Scott Oakes.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, and home to City.
Yeah, we'll win that.
So next ones are away to Liverpool, home to Sheffield United, home to Newcastle, away to Villa, home to Everton, and away to Brentford. I mean, that is our first 11 fixtures.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to get points on the board, haven't you? Got to get points on the board. It's just so hard if you don't. I mean, under Grant, I think we lost our first 5, didn't we? And you're just fighting a rear guard action. Rough word go. Just, said it on the podcast quite a few times. That was such a sliding doors moment, Rice not getting that penalty in, because that was only the second game of the season last season, wasn't it? Against Nottingham Forest, second, third, was it? Something like that?
Yeah, and Antonio had a perfectly good goal disallowed in that game as well.
Perfectly good goal disallowed, yeah, very, and also, we sort of battered them second half, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
I didn't go to that, but Jim went. And, it's disappointing for the result, but it was a bit of a kind of blueprint of how a lot of the rest of the season we're going to go. Because we went to Man U and we played really well in the Man U game and lost 1-0. And if we just put the ball in the net, we would have got a point. But we would just attack after attack. What you saw a lot that season, I think it was a sort of Brentford at home game where we got the ball and began attacking the other team's goal, and we almost looked dispirited that was happening because we knew we weren't going to score because we didn't know what to do. Ben Rama ran up the left, did a step over after step over after step over until he ended up, facing the right back. Someone went for an overlap. Maybe he either didn't pick them out or kept him himself. Stops. There's no other ball. Square it to Rice, who's making his way up, who then, spreads it out to the right. Soufal crosses, by which time the opposition have 10 people back in the box because you've dilly-dallied so much attacking the other team's goal. Like we said, we're sort of putting those attacks together last season. And there is that sort of statistic, isn't there? That XG. What we had was the respectable XG statistic, but a terrible statistic with converting expected goals to actual goals because of our final ball, because of the lack of talent up front.
Well, look, I saw the season slightly differently, and it was mainly because I think I didn't drink a lot before a lot of games, and so I found myself standing there watching it, and I found a lot of it extremely dull, really, really boring, and unambitious as well, is what I'd say. And that's something that Antonio said in one of his many podcasts where he leaked the internal secrets. He basically said that we try not to concede for the first 70 minutes and then we go for it in the last 20. And I think after he said that, you started to notice it. That was the unfortunate thing. But I mean, that's one of those things. If in those first 11 games, Phil, so say for instance a hypothetical situation that we don't win any of those games, I can't imagine we're not going to. We must surely win one of those. I mean, there's Bournemouth, there's Luton, there's Sheffield United. I think are tough. But how long? I mean, it is hypothetical. But say we didn't win any games in the first 10, would you see Moyes heading for the door?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I think I think we were equipped to sort of turn it around last season. We were unlucky. I mean, we got 15 points in the first half of the season, which is utterly wretched. 25 in the second half of the season, which is respectable. It's sort of mid-table. 50 points. That's that would be a 50-point season. It's respectable. So the Red Adair manager that came to us at our lowest point turned it around quite considerably. But also some players started turning up last season. Where was Bowen? Where was Souček? Where was Soufal for the first half of the season? Suddenly they started to get their mojo back. Especially Soufal, but also Bowen. And Bowen said it himself. He said that he just was not very good in the first half of the season and sort of apologised and went, sort of falling out of favour with England might knock my confidence a bit. Don't know what it was, but he was absolutely, Prague is etched into our memories, but also I really like him. I think he's an intelligent, really good player. If he was a little bit better, we wouldn't hang on to it.
No, that's right. Look, I agree with that. I'm in two minds about Souček, to be honest, because I think he for a lot of last season, from what we saw, Rice was doing a lot of the work for Souček. He was kind of doing two man's job. Souček was running around a lot. He covers always covers a lot of ground, but that's literally all he was doing at some point.
No, absolutely. I like him, but I mean, there's just got to be upgrades. You can't be sentimental about this. There has to be, and Rice. Moyes. It's a weird mixture of. Slow to change, but also quite sentimental about players, a bit heartless about, it's quite sort of, you could see it as quite heartless, his, sidelining of Fornals last season. But then he's quite sentimental about Cresswell and, certain other players in the team that if they're fit, they play. You saw that in his first time after Bilic, where there was a chance for Joe Hart to maybe get a berth in kind of England's 2018 campaign, and but he lost his place at Man City. So Moyes said, "Come here, be backup keeper, and if we get a chance, we'll play you." Adrian made one tiny mistake in the game. Joe Hart's right in, and then Joe Hart had to practically kick the ball into the net himself before Moyes dropped him, because I think he was like, which he more or less did. It was like, and Moyes is like, I've promised the lad, I've promised him, this is his last chance to get England, and I've promised him he'll play. And I think, weepy-eyed, sentimental David Moyes suddenly like giving this fucking hack goalkeeper the starting. But I mean, he was awful, and Adrian was, playing really well at the time.
I think Moyes shows loyalty sometimes to players because he likes a small group of players. He only works with them. He doesn't work with the others, the peripheral players, the ones that are not getting picked. So that's a bit of a weakness to my mind.
I think that's right.
Alex Crowell, for instance, he broke Alex Crowell. He didn't even talk to him, right? And he said when he left, he said the manager would not even talk to me. He was crying in his car, poor sod. He was an international, and he was just cast aside. And I don't know what that was, whether that was someone else signing him or what. But having favourites like that and constantly picking them. I mean, let's face it, ain't only Moyes. It's pretty much every manager we've ever watched has had favourites. But Moyes more so, he will carry on battering the same players until it comes right. And luckily, it eventually did. But it went off on a knife edge at one point.
Quite often the changes we want him to make and the changes that people are kind of angry that he doesn't make, he does make eventually. He's just very slow to evolve, and he likes to think, likes almost kind of empirical proof that something's going to work before he does it. And I know that I've seen that a lot, in the comedy business. It's like, I work with a lot of comedians, and there are times when I'll suggest just an extra thing they could sort of say in one of their routines. And it's like, I write for TV and radio, so I'm not just someone who's come up into this, asking for a selfie in the street who's gone, here's one for you, but I know that they won't do it unless they trial it out in small comedy clubs for like 6 months and then maybe try it once in a big venue. And then, they're so cautious to include new material because what if it doesn't work, and that's what, that's what Moyes is. But eventually the things that we, are infuriated that he doesn't do, he very often does do them in the end. He very often does. But I mean, you're right. I mean, I think this season, the beginning of this forthcoming season, the narrative has absolutely been hung on by his fingernails on 3 or 4 occasions, won the must-win game, which meant that he stays, quite often loses the next one. But, and then there's the trophy at the end. But I think it's like, I don't think anyone is saying that has, cemented him a get-out-of-jail card. I think everyone's aware of the narrative.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
But the pundits, the pundits on Match of the Day. Sorry, just to finish the thought. The pundits on Match of the Day, a lot of them were. They said if there's a manager that needs more time, it's David Moyes, and they were right. 25 points in the second half of the season and a big European trophy. He does need time, but we might hit a point where there isn't that amount of time available. And I think you are right. If we do badly in the first. Quite often they say it takes 10 games to work out, where you are, what your season's going to be like. But I think, if we get towards 15 and we're not doing badly, I mean, just do it before Christmas.
I totally agree. I've just got no faith in Sullivan actually doing it, right? Actually pulling the trigger. But look, let's move on. Guys in the chat, you've already started putting questions in. If you've got one, please put it in. No silly questions. Well, you always ask silly questions anyway. There's a few good ones here, Phil. Hold on a minute. There's one here that you'll want to answer. This is from Mickey Smith, one of our resident Cockneys in the chat. It's questioning your London credentials. How did you become a West Ham fan? You don't sound like a Towner, so I'm intrigued. Towner, as in born in London.
Well, what it was I was born in Waterloo. My mum was born in Stepney. I think my dad was born in Clapham. But that's right. Myself and Jim, who I do the podcast with, sort of grew up in Bromley. And I did have a very brief, in the kind of John Hollins, Peter Osgood era, I had, to my shame, a brief flirtation at the age of about 9 with Chelsea.
No.
But my dad was a sailor in the Merchant Navy, and the ships all docked at Tilbury. Yeah. And he wasn't really all that interested in football. And so when he came back, because he could be away, 2/3 of the year. Once he went away when I was 10, and when he came back, I was 12. That's how long away he was. So he would quite often just look in the Evening Standard and see what was on. So we would go and see Chelsea, or we'd go and see Palace, or we'd go and see, Charlton, or we'd go and see Arsenal. I think we saw everyone. But I liked West Ham. There was a picture of them, black and white picture in the back of one of the newspapers of them covered in mud with this kind of long hair and Bonzo's gold chain, and they just they're sort of like skinny calf muscles and stuff, because they've all got their socks, and it's all the kind of long haired ones. So it'd probably be Holland, Padden, Lampard Senior, Bonzo, and I just thought they looked like a fucking rock and roll band.
You mean this look, right? That look. Oh, where are we?
Yeah, exactly. That sort of, that era, definitely. Yeah. But it's Bonzo's hair probably at its longest, kind of Ian Bishop type. And just this picture on the back of this magazine, they all look fucked. It's obviously the end of the game. And they just look like a weird sort of, like from a Dennis Hopper film or something. Look like they were at Woodstock or something, And so I really liked them. And also it just it meant that my dad, because he would drive up every day when the ship was being prepped to go on another voyage, he had to go up every day because he's the chief engineer. So I quite often went with him. And so because a lot of the dockers supported West Ham, and all the prostitutes obviously being some docks, my dad sort of leant towards West Ham because he had something to talk to all the dockers and everyone about in the pub at lunchtime, but also the route driving from Bromley through the Blackwall Tunnel. It's that was made for that journey. Blackwall Tunnel was made for that journey. You just be there in like 20 minutes from Bromley. especially in the 70s when there's less cars on the road. We'd get to a game in 20 minutes door to door. It was amazing. And so start going to see them.
Another question. So you are a Towner, right? So Mickey, you are a Towner, Phil. So Phil, what's your favourite impression you did on Stop Hammertime? Dodsy's one was Vaz Tay. It's one of my favourites, actually. Yeah.
Vaz Tay was obviously when Vaz Tay came, just his look. It looked like he was in Funkadelic, or it looked like, definitely sort of like should have had sunglasses in the shapes of stars and a bass in the shape of stuff. And so I started to do him as like they would always be these things I did were always like they were emails you get on the Monday morning if you're a season ticket holder, and sometimes emails from the manager, sometimes it's from Sullivan, sometimes it's from one of the players. So it's my idea is that you as a season ticket holder have got an email, but it's from Ricardo Vaz Tay. So when he's talking about the game, he's like, now, first say you're going to go out wide. I'm like, I'm not going out wide, motherfucker. I'm going up the middle. I'm going straight up the middle. And I get that ball, and I say, ball, you know where you're going. And that ball say, oh, don't send me that, Ricardo Vaz Tay. Don't send me that. I say, get in that goal, motherfucker. So he's all like that.
Yeah. So, there's a few silly questions here. That one's not right. Right, okay. Here's one here. Is there a manager out there who'd be willing to join us for less than one season without our best player, and the majority of the ones left are almost ready for the care home? I think that manager could be Sam Allardyce.
Oh, fuck that. Do you know what I think? I mean, I actually... I invoked Kevin Keane, who in fact has been a caretaker manager for us, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I think when Rhoda had his aneurysm, I think Kevin Keane took over. But I think there's another time maybe when they sacked, because didn't they sack, oh God, what's his name? Avram Grant with a couple of games to go. And I mean, maybe Keane took over then. But I sort of think, he knows the club inside out. Do you know what I mean? I just think,
it's the right thing to do, isn't it? It's the right thing to do.
I think I think he's genuinely a good manager. By the way, there's a podcast that Jermaine Defoe, so you can switch off now, but on Radio 4, and it's all about management because it follows Jermaine Defoe as he wants to try and become a football manager. If you can sort of ignore your dislike of Jermaine Defoe, and actually, to be honest, he's not the best reason to listen to this podcast. It's very interesting about what happens behind the scenes. Very interesting about what football managers get up to, their relationship with the chairman, all that stuff. I think, it's not uniformly brilliant, but there's nuggets in it that are really good. It's well worth listening to. And the episodes are only like half an hour long. There's 8 of them or something.
Yeah. I see him in a different light now, to be honest, since he helped that young kid out. I thought he was brilliant. Yeah. Went from not liking him very much to seeing him as a bit more of a human being, Well,
he was young and got some bad advice, wasn't he? Bloody good player.
He was.
Bloody good player.
Yeah. So here's one for you. Who would you like to see as the next West Ham manager? So let's assume Moyes gets fired. Who would you like to see as the next West Ham manager? Long-term appointment.
Sort of a popular choice would have been Graham Potter, wouldn't it? And it felt like he was someone we could sort of get.
Yeah.
I mean, he absolutely screwed the pooch at Chelsea, but I think that was a basket case, and I'm not sure that's his fault. Do you know what I mean? It's like, obviously, you can't just write someone off because of sort of one bad period. Eddie Howe had a bad time at Burnley, didn't he? And it sort of took going back to the warm cradle of Bournemouth for him to get his mojo back again. And now he's gone to Newcastle and he's just got billions of pounds to play with. So, I think he probably is good, Eddie Howe. But, it's difficult to tell once they've just got billions and billions and billions of pounds to spend,
It really is. So, from Nigel Cole.
So Graham Potter. Graham Potter. Kevin Keane, I think... I'm very unlikely to appoint Kevin Keane because he's, He hasn't got a big club.
He wouldn't get it permanently, would he? But
No.
it'd be a good stopgap. If we were looking for an emergency manager, I think Kevin
Yeah.
would be perfect. But
Yeah.
Graham Potter, because we've now got this director of football system as well, he's used to he's used to managing in that system, just being the coach and having and it could work. And starting is supposed to be the dog's bollocks. He's supposed to be really good.
Yeah. So Potter's probably the standout one for me.
Yeah. So who's the funniest guest you've had on Stop Hammertime? That's from Nigel.
Probably Sam Delaney. He's just Sam's always just very good value, very funny, just a brilliant talker. Winston, I didn't know what Ray Winston would be like, and I thought it wouldn't surprise me if he's a bit. Sometimes when people get success, sort of a bit late in life. There's an actor, I've forgotten his name. He's in Clockwork Orange in 1971, but he ends up in a cop show like D.L. and Pascoe or someone like that. I know this is probably libelous, I'm going to say. I can't remember the bloke's name. But he sort of had some fame when he was really young in Clockwork Orange, then just been in the wilderness, but then was a star of a TV show. And because he's been a star again, he was just a shitbag to everyone. The runners, the makeup people. He was a fucking nightmare. And I wondered whether Ray would be, not very nice. He is a brilliant bloke, and also he was really funny on the podcast. Really funny on the podcast.
He's always good value. Whatever I've seen him on, he's good value. And
Jim accidentally called Darren Anderson. And then we just went into Ray went,
for fuck's sake.
I think we should get that Gillian Anderson. She's good. Should get her because she's she knows when there's been a supernatural mystery and stuff. She might just have an added edge, mind control. And then we're going, and Christian Anderson. Should get him. He's good. Yeah. And just went into this list of Andersons, and it was very funny. It was good, but Sam's always really good.
Yeah, I think he's a brilliant guest. He's my favourite, actually. I think you two play off well against each other. I think it's really good.
Yeah. We would do his talk radio show quite a lot as well, where basically had to kind of fill 3 hours on. I go in on a Friday afternoon, and we just talk rubbish. I couldn't believe this is going out nationally. It's us just talking bollocks. Sam was eventually fired, so that probably.
Serves him right. All right. I think we've exhausted all the questions. We are just about on. We're about 5 minutes over, but that's fine. So look, Phil, thanks for your time. It's been good.
No problem. No, it's been a pleasure.
And thanks for everybody in the chat. Now, what we're going to do is this outro. So going back to what I said at the top of the show, Phil and some other comedians did a version of Gangsters by the Specials. Was it on the BBC? Was it on the BBC?
It was, yeah. It was on a programme about the Edinburgh Festival that was on during the Edinburgh Festival. So I think it might have been live. I think that might have been live. We had to do the sound check in the morning at bloody dawn.
Yeah.
Stay up all day, get drunk, and then we did that in the evening, and it was live. Yeah, about 10 o'clock. Bill Bailey, Martin Trenham, who supports Southend. Kevin Eldon, who used to live in Herbert Chapman House near Arsenal's ground, but doesn't particularly support football, I don't think.
But
Mark might support Swindon.
So it's brilliant. So look, thank you everybody. Thank you, Phil, again. And here is Gangsters by the Specials.
Now, to put an end to the show, an end to the series, and probably a nail in the coffin of an arts festival, there's a big myth that all comedians want to be rock stars, and to refute that, I want to welcome on some of my friends. I'm sure some of the people that the audience here have been enjoying at the festival over the last 3 weeks. Please welcome, on drums, Martin Trenham, comedian. On bass, Phil Whelans, comedian. On guitar, Bill Bailey, comedian. And finally, last but not least, not forgetting, Kevin Eldon, comedian. Why must you break all my bones? Are you planning a bootleg LP? It says you've been threatened by gangsters. Now it's you that's threatening me.
secrets of the future.